Thank you, VRIC, for hosting us at this great conference, and thank you to everyone in the audience for having an interest in hearing our story, which I think is one of the most exciting, if not the most exciting, in the precious metals industry today. I joined New Pacific just last week as the company's president. I'm a chartered professional accountant by background and chartered business valuator. And prior to joining New Pacific, I spent 11 years with the well-known precious metals investment fund, Sun Valley Gold, most recently as its portfolio manager. During those 11 years, I traveled the globe, evaluating all sorts of different assets, early stage exploration, development, producing companies, and we invested in all sorts of different precious metals companies. And I developed what I think is a good understanding of what makes this industry tick. And what I learned is that to be a successful mining investor, you must back companies that can do at least one of the following two things. Ready? Number one is make a discovery. And okay, I know what you're thinking. It took you 11 years working at a mining hedge fund to come up with that profound insight. But it's important to understand that genuine discoveries are exceedingly rare events, roughly 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 5,000 odds. And most importantly, as an investor, they're almost impossible to identify ahead of time. Of course, the rewards can be life-changing, which is why a lot of us are here to give it a try. But if we're honest about it, most investors in these types of ventures don't achieve their anticipated level of success. So that brings us to option number two, which during my time as a professional mining investor is a path that I found to be far more dependable. And that's to back great teams capable of identifying and bringing existing deposits into production. That's been the recipe for success used by industry greats such as Glamis Gold and more recently B2 Golds and the Lundin Golds of this world that have built lasting value through a steady and disciplined march towards production, turning abstract discoveries into tangible mines that pay salaries, dividends, taxes, and royalties to all relevant stakeholders. So why don't more companies do this, you might ask? Well, the first reason is because it's hard. Thayer Lindsley, one of the greatest mining entrepreneurs in history, once said, if you've been lucky enough to find a mine, that's when the hard work starts. Quote, you have to have the men and the women who can make them. Their willingness to tackle difficult job after difficult job has been the key to 99% of his company's success. And the second big reason why more companies don't follow this approach is that, well, all the major discoveries aren't being made with the same frequency that they used to be in the 1990s and 2000s decades. So most companies don't actually have quality deposits in the first place that can be economically brought into production. And as a result, the industry today has fragmented into a small group of haves, with the rest being have-nots. So with that framework in mind, I identified New Pacific Metals as a company in the enviable position of having recently made one of the most significant new global primary silver discoveries of the last decade. And just last week, or a few weeks ago, the company released its preliminary economic assessment, which highlighted a 14-year open pit mine life with 171 million ounces of payable silver production, a $700 million after-tax net present value, and a 40% internal rate of return. And in its initial 4 years of production, the mine is expected to produce roughly 15 million ounces of silver per year, which, to put that into context, is almost as much as silver industry giant Hecla is guiding to produce this year from its 3 silver mines combined. And to follow that tough act, last year, New Pacific discovered a major silver and gold system at its Carangas project, which is one where the more we drill it, the more it keeps on giving. With a hole announced last week hitting 500 meters at 1.2 grams per ton gold. Now, Carangas is scheduled to release its maiden resource estimate at the middle of this year, and we're targeting a preliminary economic assessment by year end. So, with these two phenomenal discoveries, New Pacific is a company with those rare and exceedingly valuable raw ingredients to create sustainable value by turning these abstract discoveries into tangible mines like those great companies I cited earlier. And from my vantage point as a portfolio manager, late last year, I started talking with New Pacific's CEO and founder, Dr. Rui Feng, about his plans for unlocking the value inherent in the silver sand and Carangas discoveries. And as a seasoned mine finder and company builder, someone who took $10 million of capital to start Silvercorp in 2003, a company that has since returned $175 million back to shareholders in the form of dividends and buybacks. It's got $200 million of cash on its balance sheet today, no debt, and hasn't raised any new capital since 2010, and still has 15 years of mine life at its existing assets. So Rui's thinking, someone who's done this before on New Pacific, was exactly where you'd expect it to be. He was in the process of assembling a team capable of, like Thayer Lindsley said, turning these amazing discoveries into amazing mines. And so we spoke at length about the prospect of me joining his growing fit-for-purpose team. So I hopped on a plane to Bolivia at the beginning of this past month and spent 2 weeks completing my own due diligence, and was blown away by what I saw. Exceptional geology. Bolivia is home to the world-famous Cerro Rico mine, one that's produced roughly 2 billion ounces of silver and keeps going, and it's on the same belt of rocks as neighboring Chile, Peru, and Argentina, which are home to some of the world's great mines. There's also wonderful road infrastructure. We drove around at ease and it was safe. No AK-47s or machine guns following us around like can be the case in certain parts of the world. There's a deep mining heritage in Bolivia, and I got to meet New Pacific's growing and engaged in-country team. We even met high-ranking government officials while I was there, and they expressed their commitment to showcase Bolivia as a welcome destination for foreign investment. So, as a result of that trip, needless to say, I joined Rui's growing team, taking responsibility for corporate development, investor relations, capital raisings, and other strategic initiatives. It's no secret we're going to need money to advance our discoveries and build our mines. Our most recent silver sand PEA pegged the initial CapEx at a manageable $308 million, but it's capital nonetheless we'll need to raise to move it into production. And also, discoveries of the scale of silver sand and Carangas attract plenty of corporate interest. So I'm excited to contribute my financial expertise, industry knowledge, and relationships to help New Pacific's team in that regard. I also made a personally significant investment into the company's treasury and now have meaningful skin in the game alongside my fellow shareholders. So that's my story, how I got here, and why I think New Pacific is a special company and at an opportune time for investors. And I haven't even mentioned the company's Silver Strike project, which is an emerging earlier stage project with multiple different styles of mineralization. And just in a scout hole alone, drilling in 2022 last year hit 200 meters at 1 gram per ton from surface. Bolivia is elephant country. So if you want to learn more about these projects, we're at booth 533 and 529. Please come on by. I'd love to meet you in person and tell you more about this exciting company and our wonderful projects. Thank you very much.